Welcome to the Appropriations Committee. Have it started? All right. For the hearing today, my name is Rob Clements. I'm from Elmwood. I represent Legislative District 2. I serve as chair of this committee. We will start off by having members do self-introductions, starting with my far right.
Steve Erdman, District 47.
Lauren Lippincott, District 34. Tony Vargas, District 7, downtown South Omaha.
Anna Wishart, District 27.
Myron Dorn, District 30.
Christy Armendariz, District 18, Northwest Omaha.
And those who are not here may be presenting in other committees, and some of us may come and go as time goes on. Assisting the committee today is Tamara Hunt, our committee clerk. To my left is our fiscal analyst, Clint Werner. Our pages today are Amelia from Hastings, a UNL student, and Kate from Kansas, a UNL student. At the entrance, you will find green testifier sheets on the table. If you're planning on testifying today, please fill out a green testifier sheet and hand it to the committee clerk when you come up to testify. If you will not be testifying but want to go on record as having a position on a bill being heard today, there are white sign-in sheets at the entrance where you may leave your name and related information. These sign-in sheets will become exhibits in the permanent record after today's hearing. To better facilitate today's proceeding, I ask that you abide by the following procedures. Please silence your cell phones, electronic devices. For bills, the order of testimony will be introducer, proponents, opponents, neutral, and closing. When we hear testimony regarding agencies, we will first hear from a representative of the agency. Then we will hear testimony from anyone who wishes to speak on the agency's budget request. When you come to testify, spell your first and last name for the record before you testify. Be concise. We request that you limit your testimony to 5 minutes or less. Written materials may be distributed to the committee members as exhibits only while testimony is being offered. Hand them to the page for distribution when you come up to testify. If you have written testimony but do not have 12 copies, please raise your hand now so the pages can make copies for you. With that, we will begin today's hearing, and opening the hearing with Agency 84, Department of Environment and Energy. Mr. Director, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Jim Macy, spelled J-I-M-M-A-C-Y. I am the Director of the Department of Environment and Energy, commonly known as NDEE. The Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy is tasked with protecting and improving human health, the environment, and energy resources. The department is privileged to work with many Nebraskans who are conscientious stewards of the land. Through this collaboration and the department's regulatory oversight, NDE strives to preserve air, land, water, and energy resources, both now and for future generations. NDE supports the governor's budget recommendation. I come here today to ask you to reconsider 3 significant budget requests in the committee's preliminary budget. First, the department supports the governor's recommendation of the $1 million request for a groundwater quality study. Several places in the state have elevated levels of nitrate in the groundwater, and yet the state of Nebraska has never compiled a comprehensive study of groundwater statewide to analyze the problem. The $1 million would be used to hire a third party to collect data and develop a statewide plan to reduce nitrate in groundwater. We would partner with sister agencies across the state to advise on this plan and provide data. The resulting report would provide guidance for the prioritization, implementation of solutions to provide safe drinking water and reduce point source discharges. Second, the department supports the governor's recommendation for water well standards program funding. Program was formally transferred to us last year. The current funding for this program is based on fees to license well drillers and register wells. We've discovered the revenue for this program receives is not sufficient to fund the program. If this program were to become self-sufficient through increase in fees, that would be exorbitant. To accomplish self-sufficiency, this program ensures that all water wells, including domestic, irrigation, and public, are correctly drilled. Further, the program guarantees surface water does not flow into the groundwater through improper or non-compliant casings and scaling of the well bore. We will use funding for this program to inspect wells, ensure well drillers are doing correct work, provide training, and to issue licenses to qualified professionals. Finally, the department supports the governor's recommendation to include funding for the 404 program. NDE received authority in fiscal year 2022 to proceed with the 404 program from LB 809, with the general funds being appropriated in LB 809A. The Clean Water Act, Section 404, authorizes the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to permit specific dredge and fill activities around designated waters of the United States. The state of Nebraska under NDE is in the process of assuming Section 404 permitting authority from the Army Corps of Engineers. The requested funds will be used to hire additional staff to work on remaining assumption program elements and develop permitting software. Once this program is fully developed, it will be self-sustaining and we will no longer require general funds. Our constituents have asked for this. Our stakeholders have retained a strong affirmation that this program should quickly proceed. I appreciate the work of the committee and your consideration to return the agency budget as proposed by Governor Pillen. This concludes my comments. I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Other questions from the committee? Senator Wishart.
Thank you, Director, for being here today.
Thank you, Senator.
For the $1 million water quality study, if that's advanced, when would that be completed? Would you estimate?
It would probably take a year and a half total to get an RFP out on the street and that completed
Okay. And this would be statewide?
statewide.
Okay. And then it would be a third party consultant? And
Yes.
would they work that in tandem with the Nebraska Natural Resource Districts?
We would work with all appropriate state agencies and resource partners.
Okay. I have one more question. We granted as part of ARPA funding, $4 million for reverse osmosis systems. Director, can you give us an update on that grant program?
We have advertised for people in communities both to apply for those reverse osmosis units, and the program is moving along successfully at this time.
Okay, thank you. Do you have more need than dollars allotted?
We're not quite finished with that process.
Okay.
So I don't know that I can tell you that we haven't used up all the money yet.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the committee? I had, just to clarify, the $1 million request is fiscal year 24 only? It's one fiscal year,
This year, we would,
the first fiscal year?
this coming fiscal year.
All right. All right, yes. And the 404 program, what was the dollar amount of that request? Do we have it in our book? Okay,
Do you have it there?
we have 225,000 in fiscal 24, 1,409 in fiscal 25. He had it.
You have one more question?
Yes.
Director, I do have one more question. It's my understanding that with the recently passed legislation on the federal level, that there are opportunities for home energy efficiency and electrification assistance, but need to be applied through your department to draw down those federal dollars. Can you just update us on?
Well, so there's two areas that those grant funds come from. And so the first area is the Environmental Protection Agency. And if you bear with me just a second here, I've got a letter here. So we have made application for $3 million through the Environmental Protection Agency for the climate plan. That is one opportunity area that just came through. So I think that program was announced on the 1st of March. Governor and I talked on the 9th, and I made the application before noon on the 10th.
Okay.
And I believe if you look at the Federal Register, we're already listed in there.
Okay.
So that's the only one that has come forward that's actually had direction and an applications process. The DOE has two of the home rebate programs that you were speaking of, and to this date, neither of those nor any of the other federal programs have been fully, an application made fully available for us to review. So we will duly review all those applications as they come in, give great consideration to them, but I wanted to let you know right off the bat, correct some inconsistent information that we have made application for that one from EPA.
Okay, thank you so much, Director.
Just to clarify, the DOE is the Federal Department of Energy.
Department of Energy, federal,
Just wanted to
yes.
make sure, that's what I thought. Other questions, Senator Lippincott?
Thank you, sir. Groundwater nitrates, is it trending up, trending down, staying the same?
That's why we're wanting to study. So we produce reports starting in the mid 80s. We get information from different collaborative sources. This is the report that we supplied to the legislature. This is the 2020 report, and I refer you to this report that you can have access online, or we can get you a copy of it if you want. But this starts in 1974 in one part of the state, the central part of the state. 75, it goes west. 76, it goes east. Next year, it goes north. Next year, it goes south. There's about 5 pages of this technical information about where these wells are located. But it's all over the state. It's east-west, it's north-south, and there's very little duplicate wells that have been sampled over the years. So we think we need to study and make sure that we know where nitrate is increasing, where it's decreasing, and currently it's increasing in some of the bigger wells that do irrigation. It's decreasing in some of the public water supplies, but there's inconsistent data. The data is good quality. It's just not duplicate enough to where we can do statistics on it.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Senator Dorn?
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you for being here. So groundwater nitrate, what steady $1 million for? What are you going to do with it, or what are we going to use it eventually for the data?
Look and see where problems are increasing that we can have statistics on, develop a plan for getting more data. Currently, there's only 28 private drinking water wells over the last 10 years that have multiple data hits to where we can run some statistics on. So we don't have a lot of access currently to private drinking water wells. We think that's as important as community systems, where we do have great access over a large number of years, because the drinking water program requires testing on a monthly basis on that program. So we just want to get a whole statewide study of the whole state in one swoop and see where we have more consistent problems. And then maybe we can decide on how we address our resources to correct those problems.
So when you talk private wells, do you have it mapped out that every so many miles or something you're gonna go after the testing, or I guess what's that gonna look like?
That would be part of the engineering review to deliver us a plan on what would be an appropriate amount of private wells to test and figure out how we could make a good determination.
Seeing no more questions? Oh, Senator?
Sorry. Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you for being here. Isn't this the charge the NRDs were supposed to have since for 50 years to work on the nitrates?
The NRDs do supply us with a lot of this technical information. We are responsible for groundwater quality.
So what are they responsible for?
They are responsible for statutory authority to look at where nitrates are increasing in their districts and apply certain rules to local landowners on the use of fertilizer on the land.
So obviously, something is disconnected there. They haven't made much progress, or these have been going down, right?
Well, I can't speak to what the NRDs are doing. I can only speak to what we want to do in terms of the Department of Environment and Energy.
It's pretty easy to draw a conclusion, wouldn't it be? I mean, the NRD are out there since 50 years, and our nitrate level has not improved in 50 years. Somebody's not doing something.
I understand your question, but nobody's looked at this statewide, so I'd like to have a study to look at it statewide so I can get you specifics.
The point is, they should have been doing something all along. That was their charge. So thank you for helping them out.
You're welcome.
Well, seeing no further questions, thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Are there additional speakers that wish to testify regarding Agency 84, Department of Environment and Energy? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on Agency 84. We will now open the hearing on LB 237. Senator Wayne.
He was here earlier, but he must have stepped out.
We need to get our notebooks switched over.
Anyway, sitting there in that chair. He's
just here. Okay, you coming in, we're ready for you.
We'll wait just a minute for Senator Wayne. All right, we'll open the hearing for LB 237. Senator Wayne. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Chairman Clements and the Appropriation Committee. My name is Justin Wayne, Justin, and I represent Legislative District 13, which is North Omaha and Northeast Douglas County. Today is a really, really simple bill. It only asks for $1 million to the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy Weatherization Assistance Program. One of the things that I learned during the 1024 conversation was just as much as we need to build new housing, we have to preserve the stock that we have now. And particularly when you look at North Omaha, I represent one of the oldest parts of the state, really Florence. And we have a lot of small homes down there where they participate in the weatherization program, and they're looking for more dollars to make it more successful. And there's some people behind me who know a lot more about the program, and you want to ask more program details, but this is just one way for us to preserve the housing stock that's already there. So it's really easy, $1 million consent calendar type bill. So
Any questions? Senator Armendariz.
Thank you. So do we already have a program?
Yes.
We're just looking to keep funding.
Yeah, so we have a program, we're trying to add an additional $1 million to it. There's also a partnership with the city, has a similar program, but OPPD and Habitat for Humanity are kind of the operators of the ones we have right now in Omaha, and they're here to testify in more detail about what the program is and kind of how it works.
Is it for low income?
Yes.
Other questions? Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Senator Wayne, I'm surprised it's only $1 million. That's kind of low for you. But with that said, why would we, if you already have a program, why would you need another half employee?
I have no answer for that. Well, I mean, I don't know. We'll have to ask the people if they're behind with that. I don't know.
So is this kill the bill by the fiscal note?
Maybe. Maybe.
I thought it was kind of strange if you already have it.
I agree with you. I saw that and I was like, huh, where'd the 45,000 come from? But okay. You know what would solve this? Epic Tax.
That's it. And, well, we'll see what happens.
Are there other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Wayne.
I have 2 bills in education, so I will not be here for closing. That does not diminish the importance of this bill.
All right, thank you, Senator.
We'll take that.
We will now take proponents for LB 237. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Give the young lady a minute to get those passed out, so.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You can go ahead and start.
Sounds
please.
good, I will. Good afternoon, Chairman Clements and members of the committee. My name is Britton Gable, Britton Gabel, and I'm the manager of Advocacy Solutions at Omaha Public Power District. I am testifying in support of LB 237. On behalf of OPPD, Metropolitan Utilities District, and the Nebraska Power Association. The MPA is a voluntary association representing all of Nebraska's 165 customer-owned public power systems, including municipalities, public power districts, public power and irrigation districts, rural public power districts, and rural electric cooperatives engaged in generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity within Nebraska. I thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony to the Appropriations Committee on this important legislation. I would like to thank Senator Wayne for sponsoring this worthwhile legislation that will truly help Nebraskans that are struggling with heavy energy burden. I'd also like to thank Senator Wishart, who started us down this path with LB 449 in 2021 that allocated $200,000 over 2 years to the Income Weatherization Assistance Program housed in the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy. Those funds were evenly dispersed across the state of Nebraska. I previously worked at the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, where I was responsible for the administration of the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program and managing the light heat weatherization investment prior to joining OPPD in January of 2019. More recently, being responsible for managing OPPD's Advocacy Solutions Department, my comments will show the benefit of the weatherization program and identify opportunities for impact that this appropriations bill will address for the state of Nebraska. Low-income households carry a large burden for energy costs and cannot afford investments in energy efficiency improvements to their homes. LB 237 will help alleviate the heavy energy burden through cost-effective building shell improvements such as insulation, air sealing, heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, lighting, and appliance replacement. As federal, state, and local governments, utility companies, and local agencies offer utility assistance programs to help households reduce their energy burden, these programs do not address the long-term issue of living in a more efficient dwelling. Per a recent national evaluation of weatherization programs in all 50 states, households served by weatherization programs save an average of $238 per year. In 2022, OPPD received 39,902 utility assistance payments totaling over $15 million with an average of $383 per benefit. Weatherization is a long-term solution to address utility bill affordability. Once a home is weatherized, these measures continue to save money and energy year after year so income can go towards other living expenses. Weatherization can reduce low-income energy burdens by about 25% per national study released in September 2020 by the American Council of Energy Efficiency Economy. LB 237 will go a long way to reducing these burdens. OPPD is a leader in investing in low-income energy efficiency and weatherization programming. Since December of 2019, OPPD has funded audits and weatherization of 202 homes through our Energy Efficiency Assistance Program. These 202 homes have generated a projected annual energy savings of $198 per home per year. Our program is administered by Habitat for Humanity of Omaha and Southeast Nebraska Community Action Partnership. LB 237 will enable more of these audits and improvements across Nebraska. OPPD, MED, and NPA urge this committee and the legislature to pass LB 237. Appropriating state funds for home energy audit and energy efficiency improvements will help low-income households stay safe, healthy, and have a long-term reduction of their utility costs. Thank you for your time, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Are there questions? Senator Armendariz?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I have basically a business question as you go through the numbers here, that your assistance fund, where do those dollars come from?
Yeah, so that over $15 million in assistance, that was funded at OPPD through the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program managed by the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. It came through OPPD's own energy assistance program that is funded 100% based on donations. And then also during 2020, we had also received ARPA funding, and those programs have now ended, but there's one that was administered by the city of Omaha, one administered by Douglas County, and then the state of Nebraska program.
So the funds, to me, if you would reduce this $15 million spend on assistance payments by weatherizing these homes, couldn't you just transfer that to weatherizing the homes instead of paying out the assistance? It sounds like an internal business.
Yeah, so
problem.
these are funds that come to OPPD based on other entities, other than our own energy assistance program. In 2022, we distributed a little over $295,000, and we actually fundraise that money as a public utility. So we don't have ratepayer funds funding that $15 million outside of that money we raise. And to answer your question specifically, the goal of weatherization is to offer a long-term solution to reduce a customer's need to actually have utility assistance. If we can improve their dwelling and reduce their utility bills, I mean, as I said in my testimony, right now the average outcome is about $283 a year. That's almost an energy assistance payment saved. So when you look at the long-term impact, we can save $283 per home over the course of 20 years. That's significant savings. And then therefore, as a reduced energy burden, there will be a lack of need for energy assistance depending on that household's income. You can't say that specifically because life does happen to people.
So this assistance program, how much is the state contributing to that assistance program?
So the state, so our energy efficiency assistance program that I referenced in here is 100% funded by OPPD. So our energy efficiency assistance program is funded by OPPD. The light heat program does contribute to weatherization. I believe in 2021, LB 306 was passed, and that bill itself put 10% of light heat funding towards weatherization in the state.
So what I'm trying to do is see that we as a state taxpayer money is better off funding weatherization because we already put $5 million toward the assistance program, which would cut down to just that $1 million improving weatherization. I'm looking for those numbers. Do you know how that correlates?
I can't specifically answer your question with exact numbers, but our goal
Yeah, because if
is,
we come out cheaper doing
Yeah.
the $1 million, then I want to know that.
Yeah.
Because I need to know how much we're already spending.
yeah, and I,
You can give them to me. We can get them.
yeah, we will follow up and get an answer to your question.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
Senator Dover?
And you'll send that to everyone?
yes, we will make sure to get responses and get the answers to everyone. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, we usually like to have you email our clerk, and the clerk will distribute to the committee.
Okay, sounds good.
Other questions? Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you for being here. So you heard my comment or question to Senator Wayne about why we have to add a half a FTE. To do this, we already have the fund established, right? We already have the commission set up. Why do we need another half employee?
Yeah, so I can't testify regarding NDE's request in a position. The purpose of this funding is going directly to the program to support the existing program that exists so we can reach more homes and weatherize more homes. I can't testify the reason why they're asking for a position because the program already exists today.
So does NDE work this program?
Yes.
So I asked the wrong person, sorry.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Next proponent for LB 237. Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good.
My name is Tracy McPherson, Tracie, McPherson, McPherson. I'm the Public Affairs and Advocacy Director for Habitat for Humanity of Omaha. Today I'm here on behalf of Habitat Omaha and the 117 families we service through our weatherization program in 2022 and the almost 200 families we will utilize the program this year in Douglas County alone. I'm here to voice our support of LB 237. While most people know Habitat Omaha builds new homes, we also work hard to preserve the current housing stock. One of the ways we do this is through our weatherization program. We consider it an important service to the community, especially for low-income homeowners and even renters at times experiencing high heating and cooling bills or living in unsafe and unhealthy conditions. While the work involved in weatherization seems simple, things like replacing a door, caulking a few windows, or replacing an old appliance with an Energy Star rated stove or refrigerator, this work is far from simple. The majority of the homes we weatherize are much older housing stock. Some of them are 100+ years old and maybe even older. It's not unusual for the crew to find windows and doors with cracks so big you can see the daylight pouring through. Can you imagine how that feels during a Nebraska winter? Replacing a door in a house this old often requires extra time and attention because the door size is not standard. This requires specialized attention to prep the old space to ensure the new door windows will work. Our crew often waits for weeks for that custom ordered door to be delivered. And as most of us know, any custom order for your home takes more time and special carpentry work that has to happen in order to complete the project. A simple appliance delivery, for example, could take half a day. Again, a home built in 1929 frequently doesn't have doorways wide enough for a new appliance to enter. The crew has to remove the door and sometimes even the door frame to install the new appliance and to put everything back together again before the job is considered complete. In theory, that delivery should have taken 30 minutes, but it is now a full day's worth of work. Another example of a simple task performed by our weatherization crews is adding insulation in an attic with none. Again, this project should take maybe one day. But about 3 weeks ago, while installing insulation in an attic of an older home, the work was halted due to bats. Now, it could take months to complete this job as the crew waits for clearance from animal control to evaluate the situation, but it looks like the work can't be completed until spring. Who knew bats were protected? While the work can be unpredictable and sometimes challenging, we know it's worth it, just as retired North Omaha resident Miss Betty. Miss Betty lives in an older barn-style home on the east side of Douglas County. Earlier this winter, she contacted Habitat Omaha's weatherization program for help. As the weatherization techs were evaluating Miss Betty's house, her heater went out right before a deep freeze this winter. She called one of the crew members over the holiday break with a plea for help. She told him her pipes had frozen and she was not sure she had the funds to cover it because as a retiree, she's on a fixed income. Fortunately, the crew was already familiar with Miss Betty's house and could evaluate and quickly place the order for what was needed. Another homeowner that sticks with me is Jackie. We added a furnace in Jackie's home through the weatherization program in 2021. Notice I did not say replace the furnace. I said we added a new furnace. Every day, Jackie would have to cut blocks of wood throughout the winter to make sure she had heat. In February of 2021, we installed a new energy-efficient furnace in Jackie's home. LB 237 will allow us to help even more families like Jackie and Miss Betty. This bill can help make a federal program work better and more efficiently for Nebraska families. The weatherization program is critical to our community. We know the challenges, but we also see the results. The program allows families to save money on utilities, allowing them more cash for groceries, increase their savings, or age in place a little more comfortably in their own house. LB 237 will allow Habitat Omaha to make more families to do these things and so much more. Today, Miss Betty and Jackie's homes are in much better program sure both aging securely. LB 237 people and Jackie.
Other issues for the committee? Senator Wisher?
Tracy, thanks for being here today. Thanks for the work you do. We had a piece of legislation that was brought before us, I think it was last week, that talked about the fact that because of recent federal legislation, there's about 91 million in home energy efficiency and electrification assistance that could come to Nebraska that we'd be eligible for. And the director just spoke about the rules and regs are still getting formalized. Is your organization working with the department to ensure that we're pulling down those dollars that
Yes.
could go to support this type of?
We absolutely are. The challenge that we're having is on a federal level, though. There's an ACPU, an average cost per unit formula that we have to use. That means we can only spend about $8,000 per project, and projects are coming in probably more like 12 to 14,000. Then as a nonprofit, we can cover that cost through fundraising, which we do. We don't turn any homeowner down. We make sure that the work gets done. But until we do some federal advocacy work to get the ACPU caught up with inflation, it's going to be tough for us to spend that down. And we have done some, Habitat has done some work on the federal level to advocate that they take a look at that.
One more question. So then could we layer these state dollars to support that gap? Could these state dollars be used for that?
I would love it, yes. We can't pay our weatherization technicians very much money. So that's part of the problem. We'd like to hire more people to do this work, but because we're stuck to that formula, to hire more people means the cost of the projects would go up. So it would be very tough for us to even hire a second crew. And I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, my freshman college son had an internship that paid him more money than we can pay our weather technicians. And I think that's sad because this is not glamorous work.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Are there additional proponents for LB 237? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clemens and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Tina Rockenbach, TINAROCKENBACH. I'm the Executive Director for Community Action of Nebraska. We are the state association representing all 9 of Nebraska's community action agencies, currently serving all 93 counties, and I'm here to testify in support of LB 237 on behalf of our network. Currently, 7 of our 9 agencies administer weatherization services across the state of Nebraska. And throughout the state, the weatherization services are administered among a network of nonprofit service providers, such as Community Action, Habitat for Humanity. Weatherization services are in extreme demand, with all of our agencies reporting significant client waiting lists for these services, ranging from 6 months to a year or more. Our agencies work diligently to prioritize projects to serve the most vulnerable populations, including the elderly, disabled, and families with young children. The improvements we are able to make to our clients' homes not only reduce the heating and cooling expenses for those homes, but but it also ensures that their homes have proper heating and cooling systems to handle Nebraska's various weather conditions. Our most vulnerable population should not be concerned with expenses related to these improvements, and our weatherization programs are done with little or no cost to them. Additional state funding for these projects would have a tremendous impact on our ability to help more families and reduce our waiting lists. By increasing the state funding outlined in LB 237, it would allow our network increased flexibility in project expenses that the federal LIHEAP and DOE programs restrict. And that would be in relation to the ACP you were just hearing about. Without going into quite technical detail, it is important to understand that all weatherization service providers have regulated ratios and unit costs that govern how much can be spent on these home improvements, as well as the types of repairs and replacements. Our network weatherization directors recently met with NDE to discuss how this funding increase would be implemented within those ratios and costs, and to allow for more versatile application and appropriate supplemental support for current weatherization programs. Homeowners who qualify for weatherization are eligible with incomes at 200% of the federal poverty level or lower. This encompasses a large amount of working middle class and retirees on fixed incomes. The benefits to home weatherization completion results in extending the life of an older home commonly found around Nebraska and especially in the rural areas. Statistics show that a return on investment on these projects yield an average of 18 to 19% reduction in utility costs for the homeowners, allowing not only a home that is safer and more energy efficient, but also creates a more economical stability for the family. The DOE reports that for every dollar spent in weatherization assistance programs, $2.78 of non-energy benefits, including health and safety, go back to the homeowner. And additionally, another $1.72 of energy savings directly back to the homeowner's budgets. All items installed have a life expectancy set to them. Smaller projects such as window sealing or air conditioner replacement average 10 to 15 years of life, while larger projects such as furnace replacement or insulation average 20 to 30 years, demonstrating how an older home's life extension can also help to serve housing shortages in many communities. By supporting the appropriations proposed in LB 237, it would allow weatherization providers such as our network to expand their ability to complete more projects, which in turn will serve more Nebraskans. Thank you for your time, and I'll do my best to answer questions you may have.
Other questions from the committee? Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you for coming. So in your comments, you said eligible up to 200% of the federal poverty level. Give an example, a family of four, what would that be?
At a 200% level, you're looking at about $40,000 to $42,000 a year for a family of four. And there is a very complete application process that they go through when they come in to apply for the weatherization program. And one of the major criteria is their income.
Thank you.
You bet.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next proponent for LB 237. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements, members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Carol Bodine, CarolBodeen. I'm the Director of Policy and Outreach for the Nebraska Housing Developers Association, testifying in support of LB 237. The Nebraska Housing Developers Association is a statewide association comprising over 70 member organizations from across Nebraska. Our membership is diverse, including for-profit and nonprofit developers, local governments, housing authorities, bankers, investors, and economic development organizations. We are united in support of our mission to champion affordable housing in Nebraska. We support LB 237 to allocate additional money to the Department of Environment and Energy to help the low-income households through the Low-Income Weatherization Assistance Program. This program provides crucial assistance in the form of heating and cooling to our most vulnerable populations, includes energy audits, energy efficiency weatherization services, as well as replacement of HVAC systems. As well as supporting our members and advocating for affordable housing, our organization also administers a program through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka called All Seasons Affordability. And it's a small grant program. We've had it in place for a couple of years. In the 2 years that we have been doing this program, we have helped 53 homeowners obtain a new furnace and air conditioner. And to echo what Tracy said, oftentimes that is not replacement of a system. That's installing a system where there was not one before. We have, in fact, of the over 50 homeowners that we have on our waiting list right now, I know of one who has been calling us because she's running out of wood and it's still cold and she doesn't have a furnace. We've helped over 50 already. We have more than 50 on the waiting list. It's not a program that we've advertised. It's through word of mouth, through our members and through others. And so we know that this is an area of great need. And so we feel that that the low-income weatherization assistance program is very worthy of these funds. And also the very important energy efficiency work that they do, the weatherization, can also help those who already have a system to hopefully maybe extend the life of that as well, since the funds are more difficult to actually replace the whole system. So we ask that you advance LB 237 from the committee and ensure that these funds are included in the budget. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none,
All right.
thank you for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Are there additional proponents for LB 237? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Kenneth Winston, Kenneth Winston, and I'm appearing as an individual in support of LB 237. I've spent several years working on issues related to the cost of utilities, with a particular emphasis on their impact on lower income Nebraskans. In 2019, I researched and wrote a manual on utility assistance and energy efficiency programs for legal aid of Nebraska. As has previously been testified, as previous testimony has indicated, low-income people are particularly impacted by energy costs. They often live in homes that are drafty, poorly insulated, and have outdated heating and cooling systems, or as was indicated, they may not even have a furnace. As a result, they often have high utility bills, especially in the winter and summer months. Combined with the lack of financial resources to begin with, they often have a difficult time paying their bills. High heating and cooling bills often have spillover impacts in other parts of people's lives. For example, a single mother might have to choose between paying a heating bill or making a car payment. Energy efficiency programs provide benefits on every level. They benefit the households involved by making their homes safer and more comfortable while reducing their energy bills. Reduced utility bills means more money available for other things, as was previously indicated, things like rent, and childcare, and car payments. By making their homes more energy efficient, this is a benefit that carries over, as was also indicated, that carries over month after month and year after year. It can also reduce the need for energy assistance or other programs that help other low-income people. Energy efficiency programs are also a benefit to our utilities by reducing demand. If you recall the polar vortex from a couple of years ago, one of the things we were asked to do was reduce our thermostats, was to lower the temperature on our thermostats, so there would be less demand on the system. Lower demand makes the grid more stable and extends the time for needing new power generation. In addition, energy efficiency activities like installing insulation, weather stripping, upgrading heating and cooling systems also benefit the local economy by providing jobs for people who are installing those systems. Additional funds will help the agencies involved assist more clients. As you heard, there's long waiting lists, sometimes for an extended period of time, and these benefits will spill over to benefit the rest of us. I encourage the committee to advance LB 237 or include the funds in the program in your budget as it goes forward. And then as was previously indicated, would also, I testified last week in support of LB 560, which would require the state to seek funds to help Nebraskans invest in insulation and heating and cooling upgrades. These are federal funds. There's $91 million that would be available to the state, with 45.5 earmarked for low to moderate income families. I'd be glad to respond to questions.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next proponent for LB 237. Seeing none. Are there any opponents regarding LB 237? Seeing none, is there anyone in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, we have position comments for the record. We have 2 proponents, no opponents, no one in the neutral position. That concludes the hearing for LB 237. Pardon?
Just Julie.
And is,
Senator Slama's out in the hallway.
so,
We just need somebody to tell her.
would you have Senator Slama come in?
Back in the small room. Where the room extends to the hallway.
This is a big room, actually. Wait till we get to
Here
the,
to our.
wait till we get to the garage. Just have this size. We will now open the hearing for LB 534 from Senator Slama.
Thank you very much, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Julie Slama, Julie SLA, MA, and I represent District 1 in Southeast Nebraska. I'm here today to introduce LB 534. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware, rural communities often face unique challenges when it comes to providing safe and clean drinking water to their residents. The flood in the spring of 2019 serves as a stark reminder for me of just how crucial access to clean water is for our communities. When the Missouri River levee breached near my hometown of Peru, the water treatment plant had to be shut down. The majority of Peru, including Peru State College, was left without drinking water for months. We had to truck in drinking water from March until August of that year. This is what inspired me to bring LB 534. Clean water is not a luxury, it is a basic human right. Yet many rural communities struggle to maintain their water infrastructure due to limitations within their budgets, leaving their residents at risk for waterborne illnesses and other health issues. Communities should not have to ration clean water in order to make do. Families should not be concerned about future health problems down the road due to high levels of nitrate. LB 534 aims to address this critical issue by providing grants to cities of the second class and villages to construct drinking water infrastructure projects that will ensure that their residents have access to clean and safe drinking water. Specifically, the grants will be targeted towards communities where test levels for nitrate in drinking water pumped from public wells exceeds 10 parts per million. Nitrate contamination in drinking water can be a significant health risk. Specifically, in infants, exposure to high levels of nitrate can cause a condition known as blue baby syndrome, which can be fatal if left untreated. In women who are pregnant, high levels of nitrate can cause birth defects. Other health risks include increased risk of colon cancer and thyroid disease. By providing these grants, we can help ensure that all Nebraskans have access to safe and clean drinking water, regardless of where they live. This will not only improve the health and well-being of Nebraskans, but also help to promote economic growth and development in our rural communities. AM 751, which if a page could help me hand this out, is just a simple technical fix. Thank you. It further clarifies and defines the scope of communities that would be eligible for these grants. I urge my fellow senators to support this critical bill, which will help to protect the health and well-being of our rural communities and ensure that all Nebraskans have access to clean and safe drinking water. With this said, I'm more than willing to work with the committee and any stakeholders on any changes or potential water infrastructure packages, no pride in ownership for me, to ensure that quality rural drinking water is addressed. Thank you very much for your consideration. All right.
Other questions? Senator Wishart.
Well, thank you, Senator Slama, for being here today and bringing this important piece of legislation. In talking with the communities that you have in mind, well, first a couple of questions.
Mhm.
The department just recently came in a couple of testifiers ago and talked about a water study across the state. Do you see this as an opportunity to pair that where we study the state issues and are able to target then the dollars to the communities that have the highest risk of nitrate contamination?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to partner with a study, but also with the understanding that the problem we're facing in our communities is now, not just 10 years down the road.
Okay, so that was my second question then, is you're requesting ARPA funds. Have you talked with second-class cities and villages that you're thinking of? Are they going to be able to put the infrastructure in place to meet that aggressive timeline of ARPA dollars?
Yes, that is something in this bill. We initially sought ARPA dollars. It sounds like there may be some that get turned back to the state. And to make ourselves available for that, yes, the first in the door would be able to qualify for those dollars, I believe. And we're flexible with funding sources. If the ARPA dollars from other projects don't get turned back, we're happy to seek out funds wherever we can get them.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you again for bringing this legislation.
Thank you, Senator Wishart.
Other questions from the committee? Senator Dorr?
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you, Senator Slama, for being here. So these funds are not additional federal funds outside of our bill last year, our $40 million. These are funds like from other sources then, or what kind of ARPA? I mean, are they ARPA funds from the federal government that didn't come into the state originally?
There are ARPA funds in communications I had in the lead up for session, ARPA funds that I believed and still believe will likely get turned back to the state due to a lack of ability for some of those projects to fulfill the ARPA requirements. But again, I'm happy to get funding wherever we can get it. All right.
Other questions? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you. And I'll be waiving my closing. I've got to get back to committee.
Oh, all right, very good. We'll now open it for proponents on LB 534. Seeing none, is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, anyone here in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, I do have, see waves closing. Opposition comments for the record. LB 534 has 5 proponents, no opponents, 2 neutral comments. That will conclude the hearing on LB 534. We will now open the hearing for LB 571. Senator Lippincott. Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements. My name is Warren Lippincott, L-O-R-E-N, L-I-P-P-I-N-C-O-T-T. I represent Legislative District Number 3434. Thank you for allowing me to open on LB 571, which provides for a general fund appropriation of $750,000 to the Department of Environment and Energy to carry out the provisions of the Water Well Standards and Contractors Practice Act. I want to begin today by calling your attention to the fact that Governor Pillen's proposed budget does include an appropriation increase to the NDEE of $635,000 each year of the next biennium for the continuation of this program. I appreciate Governor Pillen's recognition of this program's importance in his proposed budget. Let me give you a brief overview of the Water Well Standards Program. Primarily, this program protects Nebraska's groundwater resources from potential pollution by overseeing the licensing of water well contractors, providing construction oversight and inspection of new well installations, and assisting well contractor education. Currently, the program has 1 part-time supervisor, 3 field inspectors that cover the entire state of Nebraska, and 1 office support staff position. LB 571 does not contemplate any new or expanded positions for the program, just a maintenance of current staffing levels. This program was created by the legislature in 1986, and from that time until 2020, the program was housed under the Department of Health and Human Services. In 2021, the legislature shifted administration of this program to the NDEE. As a result of that transition, this program lost a significant portion of its funding stream. While the program does collect licensing fees, approximately $150 for 2 years, there are less than 1,000 individuals licensed in any capacity under the program. The licensing fees collected by this program do not generate anything close to enough revenue to cover the entirety of the program's expenditures. It brings in approximately $26,000 a year. The $635,000 per year appropriation contained in Governor's budget proposal will allow this program to continue operating in its current capacity. LB 571 suggests a per year appropriation of $750,000, an additional $115,000 over the governor's budget. These additional funds are requested to allow the program to adequately address a couple of pressing problems in Nebraska related to water quality issues. To frame the issue for this committee, we need to determine whether these issues justify the additional $115,000 per year. The chairman of the Well Standard Board, Tony Beck, will testify behind me regarding the history of the program, its functions, and its funding. He's here to discuss with you the issues that exist and what the board will be able to accomplish with the additional $115,000. Tony has much more experience with this program than do I, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Senator Armendariz.
Thank you. Can you say the staff numbers again? And titles?
The staff number right now has 1 part-time supervisor, 3 inspectors that cover the entire state, and 1 office support staff position. That's it.
Other questions? Senator Dover.
You know how many tests they do annually?
Tony Beck has that number right at the front of his head.
Is he here today?
He
Okay,
is.
I'll wait and ask him. He'll be testifying. Will he be testifying?
He will be.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none? Oh, was there a question?
No.
All right,
Robert.
thank you. We'll now accept.
I put this up so when I want to talk, I'd have to pull forward and I can go forward. So I can just-
We'll invite proponents for LB 571.
At least he didn't tell you to lay the hand.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Do I need to wait for her to hand it out or just go? Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't get to do this very often, so I'm not sure what the proper process is. Good afternoon, Chairman Clements. My name is Tony, T-O-N-N-Y, Beck, B-E-C-K. I am the chairman of the Board of Directors of the Nebraska Water Well Standards and Contractors Practice Act. I'm a water well drilling contractor from Ainsworth, Nebraska. My family has been in the water well business since 1950. I am a past president of the Nebraska Water Well Drillers Association, and I have been a member of this board of directors for the past 6 years. I am currently chairman of the board for the past 4 years. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I want to begin by calling attention to the fact that Governor Pillen's proposed budget includes an appropriation increase to NDEE of $630,000 each year for the next biennium for the continuation of this program. I appreciate Governor Pillen's recognition of this program's importance in his proposed budget. As described by Senator Lippincott in his opening statement, our program does not have the ability to continue to do the work the program was created to do without additional funding. Our program is funded through license fees and water well registration fees currently, and those fees fall far short of what is needed to operate the program. In order for the program to continue to function in its current form, we need at a minimum the $635,000 that the governor's budget, that is in the governor's budget, excuse me. LB 571 suggests a per year appropriation of $750,000. The reason for this higher requested amount is that our program can only function at a very limited or at a limited level with the proposed funding of $635,000. It was decided that we should ask for more than the bare minimum so that our board could do more to address the many groundwater issues in the state of Nebraska. This program has many groundwater issues to address on behalf of the citizens of Nebraska. Our board wants to be able to do more than the bare minimum to help protect and provide quality groundwater for the citizens of Nebraska. Our board deals with many aspects of groundwater quality throughout the state. Unfortunately, with this proposed level of funding, we are not in a position to do anything more than operate the program in its current form and function. Historically, our board has done much more than what we can do currently to help protect our groundwater resources. As an example, in the past, we have done the necessary science and research to develop a water well grouting standards program that provides vastly improved water well construction standards for the citizens of Nebraska. Those standards have been adopted by many groundwater agencies around the world because the science proved that with proper grouting materials and proper placement, we could dramatically improve the protection of our groundwater resources. There are many aspects to protecting our groundwater resources for the future or for the current and future residents of Nebraska. Our state faces many challenges in protecting this vital resource, and we take that responsibility very seriously, and that we need additional funding for this program. We'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee would have of me or go into greater detail if so desired. I appreciate your time and attention to this matter before you.
Other questions from the committee? Senator Dover?
How many inspections do you do annually?
The inspections that we do annually, we currently, I'll give it to you in percentages, I think is probably the best way I can do it. Currently, we are trying to inspect every domestic well, drinking water type well that's constructed in the state. We're currently inspecting about 25 to 30% of the irrigation wells and about 15% of the stock and domestic wells or stock wells that are constructed in the state annually. We do not have the resources to be able to inspect all the wells that are constructed every year.
What is there anything that triggers this inspection?
Say that again.
Is there anything that triggers these inspections?
Well, when you register a water well in the state of Nebraska, you earmark on the registration what type of water, what type of usage it's for. So if it's registered as a public water supply well or as a potable well of any type, whether for private use or public use, those wells all get earmarked for inspection. And then basically what we're trying to do in addition to that is pick up a sampling of the other wells that are being constructed in all regions of the state in addition to that. So
when a property transfers title,
yes,
there's usually an inspection done. Is that who does that inspection?
That inspection can be done in a multitude of different ways. Oftentimes what happens is local water well contractors are contracted to come out and do a physical inspection of the well to assert whether or not it's up to current standards and compliance in that regard. That inspection is different than the inspections that our personnel with the licensing program are doing. They're going out and looking at any new construction that's being done after that new well has been put in place and brought online. Those are two different items. So anything that has to do with a real estate transfer and an inspection of an existing well is separate from what our program is doing.
Because I thought that when we transfer property that we had to contact the state for a state inspection to make sure it's current and the water tested correctly.
Correct. That does happen, but that's typically, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody else is in the room that can speak to that, but with our board, typically that's not happening by our individual inspectors. That's being done at a more localized level with a licensed water well contractor. And it depends on where you are. And I may be speaking out of turn to this because I don't know how that's facilitated in Lincoln and Omaha and the larger metro areas. Some of those metro areas have a different program in place than what we see in outstate Nebraska.
What percentage of your budget is paid for by these different 25% irrigation, 50% stock, et cetera, these fees that are charged?
So our water well registration, it's a flat fee per well. And how much of that is going to our program? Is that what you're asking me?
I was just wondering what percentage of your
total budget does that account for?
Correct. Your operating budget is funded by fees.
Less than, well, there's two different fees. There's licensing fees and there's well registration fees. Okay. So on average, our state is averaging a total of about 3,000 new well registrations per year. Keep in mind that's all types of wells, not just, that includes monitoring well. There's all types of wells that are being done with that. So it gets a little confusing, but the reality is, in a total grand scheme of things, probably 15% of our total budget's being covered by registration fees, and through the less than 1,000 licensed contractors that are paying a fee annually through their licensing fees. Those two pieces combined account for about 15% of our annual budget.
And how much in dollars would that be?
Well, the 635 is kind of where our baseline operating budget last year was. That's kind of where that number came from, to give you a little perspective. So if you take 15% of 635, I don't have the math in front of me.
No, that's good. That answers my question.
That'll get you in the neighborhood.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none?
Chair.
Oh, Senator Wishart.
Thanks for being here. So we heard from the director the opportunity to do a study across the state. Have you had discussions with the opportunity to collaborate if we're testing wells because of this study? Is there an opportunity for you to be able to utilize that data for your purposes?
That data will be critical for everyone that's involved in the groundwater field,
Yeah.
whether it's NRDs or our agency or our department or whomever. There's a vital need for more of that information. The reality is we don't have a real good snapshot of what our problems are from a nitrate standpoint in the private drinking well arena. We know where we stand pretty well with our public drinking water supplies, but we don't have particularly a great snapshot of what our groundwater situation is with our private individuals in their situations. So it would be very helpful to have a nitrate study of some sort that would be statewide put together and have that information available to all of us.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thanks for your time.
Other proponents for LB 571? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements, Appropriations Committee. Excuse me, my name is Lynn Webster, Lynnn Webster. I'm the Assistant General Manager for the Upper Niobrara White Natural Resources District in Chadron. And I also serve as the Natural Resources District Representative on the Water Well Standards and Contractors Board. I'm here to provide testimony on behalf of the Upper Niobrara White NRD, the Nebraska Association of Resources Districts, and the Nebraska Water Resources Association. I think we can all agree water quality is very important to the state of Nebraska. Groundwater quality is especially valuable. The majority of Nebraskans drink groundwater every day, provided from either community water supply or their private domestic well. And groundwater is also utilized for the majority of the state's agricultural activities. I don't want to be repetitive because there's been a lot of good information, but I wanted to, you've already heard about when the act was put in place and the board was put in place in '86. I want to touch more again on the purpose is to provide that protection of groundwater through education, licensing, and also, if need be, the regulation of the various categories of water well contractors and managers across the state of Nebraska. The act is supported by the water well industry and the natural resources districts, as there is a need for that established standard for construction and decommissioning of water wells across the state for that continued water quality protection. Along with those standards that are currently in place, continued work is needed to study, revise, and improve the practices as new information is pertinent to this industry is gathered. As you've heard, the act is funded by a portion of the water well registration fees and also a licensing fee for the license holders under the act. There are statutory limits on the amount that fee can be raised, and the reasonable fee that can be set for licensing fees. With that transition of the Water Well Standards Program from the Department of Health and Human Service to the Department of Environment and Energy, that historic funding source through unified credentialing is no longer available. The board has been reviewing any possible funding options with the existing fee structure. The proposed bill I-571 would help provide the necessary funding to carry out these important water quality protection purposes of the act. I'd like to take this time to thank Senator Lippincott for introducing the bill, and on behalf of the Upper Niobrara White NRD, the Nebraska Association of Resource Districts, and the Nebraska Water Resource Association, I'd urge you to advance LB 571. And that's all I have, so I thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Questions, Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you for being here today. NRDs, they currently do some testing though, like on irrigation wells or anything?
Correct. I couldn't speak for all the districts, but for the Upper Niobrara White, for example, we have roughly 2,000 registered irrigation wells in our NRD, active irrigation wells. I should clarify that. We do through the chemigation program, there's about 1,600 or 1,800 of the irrigation system in our district that are set up to do chemigation. So we do them our inspections on those every other year. So we're sampling 800 to 900 irrigation water samples every year. We haven't set up in our rules for our district that we're going to try to take a water sample out of every active irrigation well at least once every 4 years. Sometimes it's hard to get to some of them because they're not always running, and then we have some folks that don't run them every year. So, but that's our target. And we do a domestic water well sampling program for all the folks in our district. And it's roughly 200 to, well, I should probably say 180 to maybe 225, depending on the year of domestic samples. Now, those are kind of hit or miss depending on whether someone's having water well issues or concerns.
Are the NRDs all on a similar system, or do they each kind of have their own guidelines to how many they test percentage-wise?
Sure. Yeah. Again, I couldn't address that for everybody without putting my foot in my mouth, but they definitely have a water sampling plan and a program, but I can't tell you exactly how they have it set up. I make an assumption that during chemigation, when they're doing those inspections, the well's running, it's a great time to grab a sample, and that's why we choose to do it that way, because we can gather a lot of information.
They do it once every 3 years. That's just how they do it.
Sure. Okay. Sure. And I would note that the majority of that information does go into a statewide database. They call it the clearinghouse for the water samples that are taken across all the NRDs, which is a nice thing. It's a good set of information.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator?
Thank you, Senator Clements. I just have a comment. Thank you, Mr. Webster, for driving 450 miles to come here.
Yeah, that's why I want to make sure I said everything on here.
I appreciate that. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
I had a question. This would be an 18% increase over what the governor was proposing. How long has the funding been at $635,000? Do you know when it was last increased?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I've been on the board, and this is my second term for representing the NRDs. So I'm just getting into it's a 5-year term, so I'm just getting the second one. So, but when the program was with Department of Health and Human Services, funding came through the unified credentialing where everybody that had a license fee I don't know how to say besides there's a pot of money that everything went into, and then programs, various programs from that would request money. I've never seen exactly how that happened, and so just say that was the 600,000 was where it's been. I can't say that that's true. And as Tony talked about with the drought study, there's years that there was some more funding for some of that research and development that occurred where other years it didn't. I can say that there used to be an inspector that was in Scotts Bluff for the west, literally half the state. The field rep for that used to be in North Platte, and they work out of their home in Arthur now, but it's a long trek for them to go around. So it's a long-winded answer to say I don't think the 600,000 is the magic number, but since it was moved to the department over the last year and a half, that's what my understanding. They've been operating in that neck of the woods as a status. So that's
yeah, I see the newly transferred, so that's hard to say what it was. So thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there other proponents for LB 571? Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'll keep this short. My name is Andrew Dunkley, Andrew, Dunkley. I'm here with the Nebraska Farm Bureau, also on behalf of the Nebraska Pork Producers Association, in support of LB 571. Thank you very much, Senator Lippincott, for bringing this bill. Water well standards and licensing is a key state program with facets of responsibility, including but not limited to continued education courses for license holders, construction standards, testing and license issuance, inspection of construction and repair, regulation implementation, and well registration. The current short staffing in this program that is partially funded by fees for well registrations is troubling for something that the state relies on so heavily. Our support for this bill is simple. Nebraska's agriculture is not only the state's largest industry, but is the country's third largest agricultural complex. In addition, we are the largest irrigated state in the nation. Nebraska is home to the center pivot irrigation system, and that revolutionary Nebraska invention is due in part to the wealth of groundwater in the state, arguably one of the most valuable assets today and in the future. That resource, coupled with well drilling, is obviously key to the success of Nebraska agriculture and our state's economy. 3 in-field technicians are not sufficient to cover the entire state. This allocation of funding is a small investment which will generate a huge return, and we encourage its passage. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there additional proponents for LB 571? Seeing none, is anyone here in opposition? Seeing none, is there anyone wishing to testify in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, you're welcome to close. Senator Lippincott.
Just one additional item. You asked what the budget was. When this agency was under the Department of Health and Human Services, the budget was right around $1 million a year. Substantially more.
Oh, I see. Very good. Well, any other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you. We have for existing comments for the record. We have 1 proponent, no opponents, no one in neutral. And that will conclude the hearing for LB 571. And we will now. I have a note. The clerk tells me Senator McDonnell is in another committee, so we will put his later, and we'll go to LB 672. Is Senator Hansen a representative here? No? Everybody. Or is there someone here for Senator DeKay? Well, we may have to contact Senator McDonnell.
Sir, we're here to speak on 672.
We need the senator to open on it first. Thanks for letting me know. Are there other testifiers? The next one is LB 613. Is there anyone here that wanted to testify in 613? You will be, okay. Well, we really need a senator or a staff to open on it to get started.
It's only 22.5 million.
What is?
That dollar.
22.5 million? You can open on that.
We must be going faster than the other committee.
We can reconvene.
We're going to reach out to other senators that are on the agenda today, and we'll see who's available. Yes. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Senator McDonnell is not here. He's in another All right, we're going to pass over LB 613 for right now. We're going to open the hearing on LB 672. Welcome, Senator Hansen.
Thank you. This isn't too bad here. When we were in here for business and labor all the time with construction, this room always got so hot. This isn't too bad here so far.
Stick around.
Yeah. All right, good afternoon, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Ben Hansen, that's BenHansen, and I represent District 16. LB 672, as amended, would appropriate $30 million to the Department of Economic and Energy to provide grants that allow up to 50% loan forgiveness to cities of both the first and second class, along with villages, for the purpose of expanding municipal drinking water treatment plants and all related, this is always a hard word for me to get, appurtenances? So all the stuff with treatment plants. It would utilize Program 513, a program that contains the primary operations, funds, and aid for sub-programs of the NDEE. These sub-programs include working with on-site wastewater, drinking water, and groundwater. I have brought LB 672 to aid small cities and towns like those in my district who support the demand for processing agricultural products, enhanced water quality, and the creation of new capital investments and jobs in the state of Nebraska. The city of Blair has embraced regional cooperation and provides the village of Kennard, the Papio NRD Washington County Rural Water System, half the city of Fort Calhoun, and the Lakeland Water Systems with water. They do this well and were able to handle the demand until recently. The reason I am asking for funds to help with projects like updating Blair's water facility is because Blair is no longer using its water for its personal uses. It is essentially serving the whole state. This is evident with the trucks that file through Blair on a daily basis on their way to and from Cargill's biocampus. Traffic counts are nearly 20,000 vehicles per day in the downtown, approximately 20 to 24% of it being trucks and semis. For a frame of reference, the average of trucks on other highways in the state is only 6 to 8%. We actually have plans for a $15 million bypass to address the issue we have been having from increased traffic. The Cargill Corn Processing Facility currently processes approximately 320,000 bushels of corn per day to provide feedstock to the other companies co-located on the campus. Blair provides water to the biocampus, serving Cargill's wet corn milling facility and the other 5 national or international companies. Currently, the biocampus has a 15.5 million gallons per day allocation from the city's 20 million gallons per day total capacity. Other companies such as Novozymes are expanding their Blair facilities, bringing businesses to our state rather than continuing to build in other countries such as Taiwan and Brazil. Their current $300 million project will require more than the allocated amount of water supply from the Blair facility and more than Blair can produce. Cargill estimates the current expansion of the Blair water system will allow them to bring additional co-location partners with over $1.5 billion of new investment to the Blair campus and upwards of an additional 300 to 500 quality jobs. This not only impacts Blair, but enhances the value of our farms and ranches by continuing to boost the value of corn and corn feed byproducts. Blair is also in the process of building a new 20 million gallon per day intake on the Missouri River due to the Corps of Engineers lowering the output of the Gavin's Point Dam during winter. The last 2 winters, we have had to rent auxiliary pumps to get enough water into the water plant. The new intake is a $15 million project. And to add to the burden, Blair is under an NDEE and EPA mandate to provide additional facilities for the water treatment plant to lessen the visibility impact of discharging spent lime and materials removing from the river water during the treatment plant process. This project is estimated at $4 million. As a community of less than 8,000 people, Blair has been a tremendous partner in growing the state economy through partnership, helping grow the biocampus with its total investment of over $2 billion and 2,000 jobs, not to mention the new 110 million square foot Dollar General distribution center with its investment of over 100 million and 300 jobs. We can continue to add to the state's economic growth, particularly in the biocampus and value-added agriculture, but we have to have the state of Nebraska's help in providing the necessary infrastructure to help make it happen. Cities like Blair cannot continue to do it alone. With that, I ask you support LB 672 in the state of Nebraska. Thank you for your time this afternoon. I'd be happy to answer any questions or defer to those behind me. And on a side note, I kind of term this the fallout of success. You know, as a state of Nebraska, we tend to invest a lot in businesses coming to Nebraska from other countries or from regionally. But sometimes the fallout of them doing really, really well, like Blair's biocampus did. If I'm not mistaken, it's the largest Blair or Cargill campus in the world. The surrounding towns and cities have a hard time supplying them with water, with resources, and also the traffic that's happening downtown. Recently, I believe a 9-year-old boy was killed by being run over by a semi in downtown Blair. So Blair is spending a lot of its own money trying to make a bypass for some of these semis coming from the north and the south to go around Blair's downtown because it's destroying its downtown economy. So that's where they have to spend a lot of the resources, and now all of a sudden this water issue is coming up because Novozymes is expanding quite a bit and they need a lot more water. And so Blair's having a hard time keeping up. For a town of about 8,000 people, trying to supply a facility that takes 75 to 80% of its water, this is where I think the state can kind of help out if we're interested in value-added agriculture. As you know, I don't really ask for a whole lot of money very often. And this is a revolving loan program. So it's not really giving them money, but it's helping them update their facilities so we can continue to grow the processing facility such as Cargill. So with that, I'll take any questions best I can.
Senator Armendariz?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. So Cargill and Novozymes?
Yeah, Cargill actually is a biocampus, and so it has a bunch of other facilities on its campus. Some of them Dutch, is it Dutch? Danish, yeah, in German, that are coming there. And because of what Cargill produces, what it does with all the corn that we send there, that we do from the state of Nebraska, they do all kinds of stuff, whether it's making plastics out of it, yeast, other byproducts. All these companies now are going onto the campus and using those products for all kinds of things. And so Cargill is just the main campus.
So how much would they be contributing to do this alongside state funds?
A lot of it has to do with the tax on the water that they pay. They pay quite a bit to the city of Blair on their taxes that we put on the water to help maintain the infrastructure, to help with the treatment of the water, to help make sure the facilities are running. But now all of a sudden they're looking to expand, and it's just like kind of a perfect storm with all the facilities being outdated and now the water going down in the river. So they put the intakes a lot farther out, and the EPA is giving them a hard time doing a lot of things too that costs money. And so we're having a hard time right now.
So is the tax use-based, or is it taxed more heavily for the high users?
I believe it's use-based. Now, how proportionate it is, I'm unsure. Somebody behind me might be able to answer that.
Other questions, Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clements. So Senator Hansen, then the amendment becomes the bill?
Yes. I think they just made it more specific on the use of it. So
Senator Armendariz asked you that question. So they're not helping with the original funding or the development of the wells. They're going to pay for it through their usage. Is that what you're trying to say?
that's ideally where the money comes from. Yeah, they're not paying for like, okay, we need to do water treatment plant. Okay, here's half the money. No, they're not doing that.
Wouldn't it make sense for them to do that?
Somebody else behind me might be able to answer better in the communication between the town of Blair and Cargill, so.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Armendariz?
Sorry, I just have a follow-up question. So that the water tax goes to who?
The city of Blair to help
Okay, so
maintain the water
state is
treatment.
funding it, but the city of Blair gets the tax back.
No, it's coming from Cargill, the water tax.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it goes to the city of Blair, but the state
Yes.
is giving the money. So the state doesn't see any of the tax dollars.
No,
Back.
from my understanding, no, but I'm about 90% sure, no.
Okay.
Senator Vargas?
Thank you, Chair Clements. Senator Hansen, thank you for being here. Could you talk a little bit about the process? You said this is a revolving loan fund.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I'm trying to match that up with this 50% loan forgiveness aspect of it. Can you just explain it?
Again, somebody behind me might be able to answer that better, but from my understanding is it's like a loan that the state provides that we can apply for, or pretty much any, this is eligible from my understanding for a whole bunch of other towns that might have water drinking issues, their treatment plant, that they can then get I think it's a 0% interest loan that they can use. Then they have to repay the state some of that money back.
Okay, some of it, but not all of it.
Yeah, to the extent, I think it's 50%. I don't really know for sure.
That was the reason why because at some point then, if they're only paying back some of it, then this will deplete and then there will be a need to invest more general funds into this at some point in the future, I imagine?
If it's needed. Like if it works well and you've seen a lot of towns using it and it's actually helping them update their facilities and getting good, clean drinking water to the people, then yeah, they might want to down the road. It's not, at least it's not $150 million, so that's good.
Should be open to making it more than 50%. I think about, we have some other programs that are full loan programs that operate as like a no interest loans so that they continually keep revolving and that they're sustained.
Possibly, I'm not opposed to looking at making this better that the committee might be interested in doing, sure.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
This is my last bill, so now's the time to just grill me. Not really, no.
This is. All right.
And I'll stay for closing too.
All right.
Yeah.
Are there proponents for LD 672? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Aaron Barrow, Aaronbarrow. I'm the Assistant City Administrator for the City of Blair. Senator Hansen hit a lot of the high points that I was going to talk about today, so I'm not going to beat you up with too many numbers or details. One of the points that I would like to make is when the industrial development came to Blair back in the mid-90s, they took advantage of the tract that was created by the state. That made that whole entire campus unable for us to annex. We don't have any property tax revenue that comes from that property. The sales tax, much of it gets returned back to those entities. So all we have is a take or pay contract for $15.5 million, 15.5 million gallons of water per day. Whether Cargill uses it or not, we receive that income. Question is asked about incentives, or not incentives, but why is Cargill paying for much of this? What we found is if we're not competitive, those companies are going to go somewhere else. They're going to go to Brazil. They're going to go to other companies or countries in Indonesia. And that's what we're looking at. We have a really robust pipeline of ag-related industry that wants to move to Blair, but it's all dependent on water. If we aren't able to bridge this gap and produce that extra 7 million gallons of water per day, we're going to lose out on those opportunities. And as Senator Hansen said, we're a community of 8,000 people less. I think we're the only community in the whole Omaha MSA that lost population in the last census. And it was primarily because of the closure of Dana College. OPPD closed their Fort Calhoun nuclear power station, and we lost those jobs. These are jobs that aren't low-skilled jobs. They're engineers, there's chemists. We're looking at a creation of potentially 2,000 jobs in Washington County, specifically to support the growth here. And that's why we're here.
Are there questions from the committee? Senator Reardon.
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you for coming. So you're going to get some of the water from the river, is that correct?
That's our sole source of water for Blair.
That's going to be it? You're not going to drill any more wells?
I have somebody here that can explain why we don't drill those wells, but the quality of the water and the quantity of the water, is my understanding, makes that not a good option for us. And I mean, we're right there at the river, so that is the best option for us.
Okay. Is that where you're currently getting your water?
Yes, sir.
So you have a water treatment plant somewhere?
Right on the river, yes.
You have no wells?
No wells.
Senator Dorn.
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Do you know approximately 15.5 million gallons a day? You said you get the income from that. Basically supplying that. What is that amount?
550,000 a month.
550,000 per month,
per month,
whether they use that amount or not.
whether they use it or not.
So I'm not real familiar with the area, haven't been up there in the Cargill plant, but Senator Erdman asked about, you're right there by the river, but then how much to get it to Cargill or the campus?
We pump, we're currently installing a 30-inch main to increase the capacity for these expansions. It's probably 3/4 of a mile, but that'd be my guess. That's an estimate.
So it's not that far to get it to them?
It's not that
like
far,
city
you
of
know.
Lincoln's facing or whatever.
Correct.
Come from there.
Correct.
How dependable is that water source? You say it's low right now.
Well, it depends on the time of day. With Gavin's Point Dam, the Corps of Engineers has, you know, the water level changes frequently. And we've had, right now, our Public Works Director just informed me a little while ago, we had to turn on, we have a set of auxiliary pumps that we have right now, you know, drawing water to meet that demand.
Okay. The 15.5 million gallons a day was for Cargill. Do the new companies also enter into an agreement for water usage?
No, sir. They purchase their, we deal directly with Cargill, and Cargill
Allocates it to everybody else?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Armendariz.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. So you said they don't pay any property tax?
Not to the city of Blair. They do to Washington County.
They
and
do
state.
pay
Yes.
county property
Yes.
tax?
Yes.
And then why not increase that dollar amount they're paying for water to cover this delta?
Again, it's about being competitive with other sites that these expansions are looking at. I mean, they're looking at sites in other states. They're looking at sites in other countries. We have to be competitive.
And what are these other states and countries giving them that we're not?
I can't answer that question.
Do we know that they're better, that they would leave if you didn't give them everything for free?
I know that it would, I think new business coming in would think twice.
Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator Clements. So obviously, they're not in the city limits or they would use TIF, right?
That's correct.
And so they're paying property tax to the county.
Yes, sir.
Right? So you mentioned the sales tax going back to them. They must have taken advantage of the Nebraska Imagine Act or
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
Nebraska Advantage Act.
Yes, sir.
How much longer will they get the sales tax?
I don't know the answer to that question.
It's a pretty significant amount.
I'm assuming it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? What is the amount of gallon expansion that you're needing to
We're
add?
currently looking to expand 7 million gallons a day production. That would give 5 million gallons for industrial use and an additional 2 million gallons for residential growth. We currently supply half the city of Fort Calhoun with water, the village of Kenner with water, the Lakeland SID with water. I think there's 800 connections there. We supply virtually half of Washington County with water. Blair's in the water business.
And did you say you're not going to be able to charge any more for 7 million more gallons?
I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with the terms of the contract. When the contract comes due right now, it is a take or pay contract for 15.5 million gallons per day, as it is right now.
So you talked about issuing a bond and paying for it with your water revenues?
It's going out for a bond versus having a revolving loan would put another burden on the residents of Blair paying the bond.
Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clements. So what's it going to cost to do this?
This current expansion we're looking at is $44 million.
So we're setting up a fund, and Senator Hansen said this would be available to other county, other locations. So if we gave you all of it, it's still not enough, right?
We have, it's my understanding, we have a commitment for $24 million right now for the the SRF funding. We're asking for an additional 18, is my understanding.
So you would take 18 of this 30?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Armendariz?
Thank you. A follow-up question on the contract for them to pay you for the water. Were there escalators built in there, or is that just locked in, and for how long, or there's no opportunity to increase that?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm new to the party.
Sorry.
I was not involved in those negotiations. I don't know.
Okay.
But we could get that back to you. We can get that answer to you.
Okay. Yeah, I would find it difficult if your costs are increasing, yet you have no ability to gather more from parties that are actually causing the escalation.
Well, and you raise a good point. Working on other projects, I had some cost projection numbers that were 2 years old, and new projection comes in, it's another $1 million for a $2 million project. It's gone up 30%. And I think, a lot of smaller communities are feeling the impact of, supply chain issues and inflation and construction costs, and that's where we are.
Other questions? You said you prefer the revolving loan. Are you understanding that is an interest-free loan?
I don't believe those are the terms that I'm familiar with.
I don't see any terms in the bill. And so by revolving, what's your understanding of what the process is?
I would have to look into the details of that, sir.
All right. It didn't seem to be quite specific in the bill. We'll have to get more information. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify as a proponent? LB 672. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators. My name is Al Shoemaker, ALSCHOEMAKER. I'm the Director of Public Works for the City of Blair. My purpose of testimony this afternoon is to probably help out with some of these questions that I've been hearing to help you out with some of the answers to those questions so that we can move forward. First of all, so that we all understand sales tax, 7% sales tax is charged on the water. 1.5% of that goes to the City of Blair, 5.5% of that goes to the state of Nebraska. In addition to that, most of the equipment that is purchased for the expansion of our water treatment plant is taxable. Again, it's 7%, with 1.5% back to the city, 5.5% to the city, or to the state. The project is a 7 million gallon expansion of our current 20 million gallon treatment plant, putting the treatment plant to a full 27 million gallons. Of that, 20.5 million gallons will be appropriated to the Cargill Biocampus. The other 5.5 million gallons, 6.5 million gallons, will be appropriated to everybody else. And as been mentioned many a times, we provide water not only to the residents of Blair, but also to a lot of Washington County residents as well. The question came up about wells. We do not have wells because we cannot get water out of wells in eastern Nebraska. Unfortunately, the water that is in the ground is of very poor quality, high in iron and manganese, and it is also a very low quantity. We did try to put wells in before we put the new intake in to try to see if that was an option, but we had to shut those wells off immediately on the test wells because the water supply was so low that the pumps were actually cavitating immediately. And so unfortunately, as also mentioned here, is we have to build a brand new water intake, which is currently under construction, $15 million expansion just for that facility. It's being built 6 feet lower than our current intake. And the reason for that is that the Corps of Engineers, through their drop mitigation process, has lowered the releases from the Gavin Point Dam in the wintertime to only 12,000 cubic feet per second. Their normal releases were 14,000 just a few years ago. And they may possibly even go lower than that unless the reservoirs are filled with additional runoff water going forward. We're hoping this winter, that with all the snowpack, that will somewhat change, but I don't anticipate it being the 100% fix. It may improve things, but not completely. And so as a result of the new intake, we are actually tying that into our existing intake so that we can take water off the river at a much lower elevation than we currently are. And as was mentioned earlier in the testimony, yes, today, our water plant intake, existing intake, is what we were calling sucking air. Our water was so low that we couldn't hardly pull any water out of our intake. And so you can imagine the impact that can be to an industrial complex and to a community of 8,000 and a service population of about 12,000 people if we have to tell them we can't get any water. And so we are doing supplemental pumping right now at the river at a substantial additional cost to try to make sure that water is in the intake and can be pulled into the water plant. Again, as I mentioned, the new intake will it will mitigate this by tying everything together, which was our most economical option to resolve this problem. This problem was first identified in 2012 when the Corps of Engineers initially came to all the water intake users, including MUD, City of Council Bluffs, OPBD before they shut down their power plant, all water intake users, and letting them know that plans needed to be made for future drought considerations. And so the City of Blair has been very proactive in trying to make that happen. The other problem we ran into was with our current expansion project is that the initial expansion was to be $27 million, which we have SRF funding for at 1% interest, 1% fee, and 30-year payback with a 35% forgiveness per component. Very doable, very manageable. If we go out on the open market, and let me finish, the expansion is costing us $44 million. Inflation is real out there. And so as a result of that, we are short $18 million in completing that project funding. And that was one of the main reasons for coming to you folks today to start looking at other options and trying to solicit the state's assistance in helping us make this happen for our business community and for the state's business as well. And so the other option is to do a revenue bond for 20 years at a roughly 6-7%. If we could do an SRF loan at even a 30-year loan at 1% interest would be a significant savings to everybody from the normal revenue bond that we would be talking about. And so as a result of that, we're looking for other more economical options so that we can be economically viable to our business community and to our industrial community to help it thrive and grow within the state of Nebraska.
All right, that's your time. Are there any questions? Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clemens. I'll just ask, do you have any more things you'd like to add? Or were you done talking? I know your time was up, but.
Yeah, I saw the red light. I appreciate it.
More you'd like to add?
The only other thing I'd like to add is, we have $15 million for an intake. We have $44 million for an expansion. And we have a $4 million EPA mandate. What that mandate is that we take our spent lime solids currently, discharge them to the Missouri River. They're not harmful to anything. They do change the river water to what I call a chocolate milk looking color, but the fish actually eat on it. It's good nutrients. But the EPA has taken the position that violates the Clean Water Act, which is true. I'm not going to argue that because you're changing the river color of the color of the river water. And so we have to spend $4 million to mitigate that problem, something that other water systems up and down the Missouri River are as well facing. And unfortunately, there is no revenue for that other than to raise rates of everybody. Normally, when you expand, you have an increased revenue. There is no increased revenue other than to go to Mr. and Mrs. Water User and raise their rates to pay for it. And for something that probably is, at least in my opinion, not a real high priority, but the EPA has made it that way. Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Armendariz?
Thank you. Have you had conversations with Cargill? What are those conversations like? And have you asked them to give you any money for this project?
We have been in contact with Cargill for this project. They have been very much in touch with us. They've been in touch with the state as well, trying to make sure that this is a viable project for them to keep our water rates competitive. and as was mentioned earlier, we're in competition with South Dakota, we're in competition with Iowa. We're losing some of our current projects that could come to Blair are going to Fort Dodge, Iowa, because Cargill's opened up a brand new facility there. They have groundwater, they have wells. They don't have to do as much treatment on that water. So it is a very competitive world out there in trying to secure these facilities and these businesses. And one of the main things that we feel that we need to do is try to keep our water rates as reasonable as possible to stay in that competitive mode and not move us out to a point where they take a look at Nebraska and say, no, we're going to go somewhere else because we get better rates.
So what were the conversations and did they say no when you asked them for some funding for this?
We are still in negotiations with them, partly is depending on what, again, we have 27 million committed to the project. We need the other 18 million committed to the project to be able to pull the full funding package together. And depending on what happens with the legislature here as to whether or not what that final funding is going to be. Now, if we have 27 million SRF and I got to put in 20 million of a revenue bond, that's going to look different than if I can put in even just an SRF loan with 1% interest over 30 years. And so that's what we're trying to find out is what can we put together here to keep these water rates as competitive as possible. And right now, yes, we've had conversations with, they know what we're up against a little bit here. And they're monitoring and helping us in the same mode here, trying to see what best options we can pull together.
So just to be clear, you have asked them to help and they're open to that negotiation and you're in negotiations with that?
We haven't gotten into negotiation because we don't know exactly what the final picture of the funding is going to look like.
Okay.
They are very much aware of what we are doing with the 27 million. One of the issues that came up is that how much do we expand the water plant? In the past, we've always expanded just for what that project needed. And then we've lost out on a lot of projects because they only maybe needed 500,000 gallons of water, but we can't expand a water plant for that much. So we've added a little bit more capacity to this plant this time to allow them and the state and the local area to benefit from being able to take advantage of some of these smaller companies, smaller opportunities. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Other questions? Seeing none, are there other proponents for LB 672? Seeing none, is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, is there anyone here in the neutral capacity? Senator Hansen, you're welcome to close.
I'm glad Mr. Shoemaker was here too, along with Aaron. They explained a lot of stuff better than I did. So I was on the city council with Mr. Shoemaker when I was there. And I used to just give him a hard time because we always sometimes would be a little bit like this, the council and the city sometimes, but I'm glad he's on my side today. So, but you can see by what they're saying, it's very competitive. I remember when I was talking to Novozymes, which is a multi-$100-million industry now in Nebraska because we incentivize them, we got them here. And one of the things they talked about it was very close between us and them going to Iowa was water was one of them. We had the supply and we had the ability to provide it to them at the rate that they needed. So I didn't realize how important it really is for industries such as corn and ethanol and everything else. Water is a big, big, big thing. And it's tough for a town of 8,000 people to supply all of that. And we want to keep incentivizing it as a state. Come here, everybody come here. But then we're, the Blair's stuck holding the bill there and the people are. So that's why I'm here.
Other questions, Senator Armendariz?
Thank you. Just basically a comment. I'm listening to those businesses over and over again. Senator Hansen, you're exactly right. These companies come here because we do have great things here that don't cost us money. We have water. We have low power rates. We have great workforce. And I feel like we're constantly paying people to be our friend. And I don't think we need to. I think we need to be the people that they're going to come here because of all those other things I mentioned. And we're selling ourselves short so often. And I want to keep reinforcing that maybe we don't have to. Maybe don't blink first when you're in a negotiation with these companies. And maybe it'll take some pain points for them to figure out that, hey, we know we have more value than what we're selling ourselves as.
And I agree. I think there's other things that we can do as a state. This is a little more philosophical when it comes to perhaps lowering our taxes and making more friendly that way, as opposed to paying for them to come here. However, when it comes to something as important as water, it really can come down to, we're going to charge you 1% and the other person's not going to charge you anything. And it's weird, you know, as tough as that is, sometimes that's really what it comes down to. And sometimes there's negotiating factors at the end where they know who's got what. And so it's either not so much blinking first, it's like who's gonna, you know, help them out a little bit more so they come here.
Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you for being here again. I guess I want some clarification. It's $30 million you're asking for, and that's going to be basically a grant from the state, or that's not a loan from the state. You're talking the loan part is a revolving loan that will go out to a city like Blair. We're going to put the 30 million in this, I don't know, 310 or whatever it is, that we're going to put in there. And then they will apply for that, and that will be grants, but then the city will have the revolving loan that will come back in.
I believe so, or the entity that's applying for them. And I think it's 0 to 50. You know, we're talking half of what they have to pay back, right?
Half
And
of
actually,
what they're going to pay
and
back.
actually, it's up to the NDE to determine that rate. It could be 0, where it's a 1-for-1 match, or it could be half.
So what the NDE will
From my
loan
understanding.
out, they will determine the rate on that loan to the city then.
I don't know so
Or
much
you-
the
or will
rate,
you
but
have
the,
that-
I don't know if it's so much the rate. I don't know for sure, but it's a payback, I think. I mean, like we're talking about, you know, half.
Well, it says 50% forgiveness.
Yes, and it could be 0% forgiveness too. From my understanding, I think the NDD has the determination to determine whether it be between 0 and 50. I think. I mean,
Okay.
so I can follow up with you and make sure you get that information.
So I understand it a little better, but the 30 million itself is going to be a grant.
Yes, whatever they apply for should be a grant that eventually someone has to get paid back. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Should pay attention to economics a little better there. About revolving funds.
Well, I just wondered how the funding was coming down from the state to clarify that, because then the rest of the program can still be set up. Yeah.
All right, that concludes your testimony. I have a position comment here. I have, coming for the record, 1 proponent, no opponents, no one in the neutral capacity. That concludes LB 672. Seeing that Senator Wayne is not here yet, we will go on to Senator McDonnell. Yes.
He told me to go ahead.
Okay, Senator DeKay, we'll start with yours then, LB 766. We'll open the hearing for that.
Thank you.
Welcome,
These are a little
Senator.
closer quarters than I'm used to.
We won't let you.
So, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriation Committee, I'm Senator Barry DeKay, spelled B-A-R-R-Y, D-E capital K-A-Y. I'm here representing District 40 in Northeast Nebraska. And here today to introduce LB 766. As written, this bill seeks to appropriate $3.25 million annually in the American Rescue Plan Act dollars over the next 2 fiscal years to the Department of Environment and Energy as a follow-up to the reverse osmosis grant program created by the legislature with last year's LB 1014. Under LB 766, NDEE would award a grant to any individual for reverse osmosis systems if a test result for nitrates in the person's drinking water pumped from one or more of such person's private wells is above 10 parts per million. My amendment, AM 651, would have the annual amount to $1.625 million and clarify that the NDEE's use of these funds must comply with ARPA. Towns and communities are not included in the bill or AM 651, just individual private well owners due to the lower requested appropriation, but I am open to an amendment if the committee feels it is appropriate. I brought this bill in conjunction with Nebraska Farm Bureau, who provided assistance with this legislation and will be testifying behind me. I also introduced this bill on behalf of Nebraskans who care deeply about having access to clean drinking water, especially where the nitrate issue is impacting many parts of the state. This bill would provide a short-term solution while the legislature and other stakeholders work to create longer-term solutions. As I understand from the fiscal office and the governor's proposed budget, the governor's recommendation included an additional appropriation for $2.4 million to the Department of Natural Resources, which would utilize nearly all of the unappropriated ARPA funds. This committee's preliminary budget did not include this amount. I would like LB 766 to be considered should there be any ARPA appropriations that are found to be ineligible and available for other uses in this session or next session. I will end by saying providing safe drinking water for all Nebraskans ought to be a priority, and dedicating ARPA funds to help individuals obtain reverse osmosis drinking system as prescribed in LB 766 is a small step towards that goal. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions? Senator Wishart.
Thank you, Senator, for being here today. And I can talk to the Farm Bureau about this if you can't answer this question since you weren't here last year.
Right.
I brought legislation for $4 million in ARPA funding to go to the Department for Reverse Osmosis. Is it your goal that we would add an additional $3 million onto that?
I would have Mr. Dunkley
Okay.
answer that behind me. I'm not aware about that amount coming last year, so I would let Andrew answer that.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, we'll welcome proponents for LB 766.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Andrew Dunkley, ANDREW, DUNKLEY. I'm testifying today on behalf of the Nebraska Farm Bureau, the Nebraska Cattlemen, the Nebraska Corn Growers, the Nebraska Soybean Association, the Nebraska Pork Producers Association, and the Nebraska State Dairy Association in support of LB 766. Water quality is an extremely important issue and one that we have been advocating for more local, regional, and state involvement on. Nitrate levels in drinking water is no simple fix, and we are pleased that Governor Pillen allocated $1 million in his proposed budget for further research on a long-term solution to this issue. In the meantime, clean drinking water must be ensured for everyone in the state. This program is the only statewide mechanism for that, and it needs to be expanded as well as further publicized. There are extreme variations in ground makeup in Nebraska. Less than 30 minutes from where I live in York County lies shallow groundwater and sandy soil. And in fact, that is Senator Lippincott's district. That area can see nitrate saturation in a year or so. Yet, where I live, again in York County, we see nitrates penetrate into the groundwater, and sometimes 50 years after application, according to best practices and standards at the time. Many homes in my area and throughout the state have elevated levels of nitrates, which is defined as more than 10 parts per million, in their drinking water from their private well. Some have chosen to install reverse osmosis systems on their own, as it is the only way to address this issue. The home that I moved into had it installed when I moved in, even though it's on town water. The expansion of the NDEE's private well reverse osmosis system will lead to more education for homeowners so they can take advantage of the free or low-cost testing provided by DHHS and the reverse osmosis rebate program through the NDEE. Just with the variability in Nebraska's soil makeup, I want to highlight the myriad of choices made by producers throughout the state every day. Some of our members have recently switched from a nitrogen application process to a dry urea-based process. While some are happy with the switch, I will also highlight that it comes with a financial cost for them that may not be feasible to the thousands of producers operating on tighter margins every single year. There are different options provided to farmers. There are varying recommendations by universities, consultants, and seed companies. There are variations in climate, water sources, and soil makeup. Because of so many of these differences, any mandated fix to this issue is not viable now. There are currently NRDs evaluating the concept of mandates on nitrogen application. And there are some calls for a statewide address of the issue, which, as I outlined, is troublesome since one size will not fit all in this situation. It is for this reason that the state must invest in its people and act on the one viable fix that will provide clean drinking water to Nebraskans with private wells. We encourage this proposed expansion of the NDE's private well reverse osmosis program while industry and soil health professionals figure out how to further address the issue, along with the $1 million that hopefully passes in the governor's proposed budget. So for those reasons, we urge the committee to advance LB 766 to general file. And Senator Wishart, I'll answer your question to Senator DeKay previously. The $4 million that was passed last year, again, thank you for your help in that. This would be adding to that. The $4 million that was passed last year is split into $2 million for public reverse osmosis systems and $2 million for private well, which this would be adding to supplement. The private well system with the NDEE, that opened up only in January for application. So there in a previous bill, I believe it was your question of how's that going. Last I heard there were at least 25 applicants, but in order to apply to that, you have to first get your water tested. So there is a call out there to get your water tested and then apply for that system. This is an attempt on behalf of agriculture to add to that and support folks throughout the state and also publicize it. We are doing everything we can to really publicize this to our members. And I know that he is as well. With that, I've got a red light, so I'll shut up for questions.
Any questions? Senator Dover.
How many households are in this area that would be covered by this bill?
I don't have that information. I believe that I haven't heard of that from the NDE either. To have a number of households that would be testing over 10 parts per million, that's one of the reasons that you heard of earlier of, I believe from the director, why the governor is asking for $1 million to study this further. As part of those long-term solutions, and I should say that as we've been in this conversation, we've come to a conclusion of there's a short-term solution of a so-called Band-Aid, which is, hey, let's fix things right now and get clean drinking water to people through reverse osmosis while we look at a longer-term solution. And folks on both sides of this issue have kind of come together and said more research needs to be done because we don't have the answers right now. And so I believe that $1 million from the governor would help to answer that question.
Okay, because I mean, the $2 million would fund thousands of osmosis for farms and wells.
Theoretically, there's varying prices.
Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you for coming. So I don't know if you've seen the fiscal note, but NDE estimates 2 more full-time employees, and they currently have a program established now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why would you need 2 more full-time employees to enhance a program you already have?
I'm unaware of why the NDE would need.
I think NDE should have been last today instead of first. Thank you.
Senator Lippincott.
this water is for human consumption only. It's not for irrigation. It's not for animals. How much does each reverse osmosis machine, how much does it cost?
It's a great question, and I want to preface this with I am far from an expert in that area. I know again, this is not whole house reverse osmosis drinking water systems. It is just drinking water. I've heard of some being $500. I've heard of some being $4,000. Again, I'm not an expert in that.
The homeowner would install it themselves, is that correct?
You know, I don't believe so. I believe the way that NDE has it set up is that that you would have to partner with a licensed professional installer, and then that once that is installed, you would get that money back in a rebate.
Okay.
Now, I will say that the homeowner would be responsible for upkeep of that reverse osmosis system. So the onus would be on the homeowner then after that, or they could partner with the installation company for that upkeep. That's what I do with the RO system that is in my home.
Are there other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there any other proponents? So LB 766. Seeing none, are there any opponents on LB 766? Seeing none, is there anyone here in the neutral capacity? Senator DeKay, you're welcome to close.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Clements, and I appreciate the discussion we had today. A couple of things on the home systems. They would vary in price from approximately $500 to $5,000, depending on the quality and the size of the units that they would be putting in. As far as upkeep, the homeowners would be responsible for the upkeep, and the homeowners would also be responsible for the nitrate testing going forward too. So I hope that answered the questions there. Installed. And that would be, if I understand it right, that would be installed by a professional, and then after the fact, if there's any upkeep, you would have to be liable to pay for the upkeep of the system from there. Other than that, I appreciate the conversation we had today. If there's any other questions, I'd try to answer them.
Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you, Senator DeKay. The amendment you just gave us, AM 651, changes the appropriation to $1,625,000 each year. That's significantly different than the bill or the fiscal note says. Is that your intention?
Right. It would basically, it would almost cut it in half. So, yeah.
Okay. So it's AM 651, I understand. Thank you.
And then asking a question on the amount of people that would be impacted, it depends on how many people statewide in a rural setting that would be impacted by over 10 parts per million that would want to have those systems installed. And with that, if we're going to try to bring rural people back to our state, young families and stuff, nitrates are a problem. Nitrates are a health issue for young children and older adults. So it's significant by everybody that brings a water bill to the different committees that's a priority, that we have water safety. And that is our most precious natural resource. We have to head the state. We need to enhance it. We need to protect it. So I appreciate your time. With that.
Other questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have position comments for the record. We have no proponents, one opponent, and none in the neutral. We'll now move. That concludes the hearing for LB 766. We now open the hearing for LB 613. About an hour late.
It would be.
I've got selective
They talk
hearing.
about, put a couple in, and we talked about plumber
That's
just
all you're
now, he said $1,000 less.
Welcome to the Appropriations Committee.
And $2,000 you already appropriated.
Thank you, Chairperson Clemens and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Mike McDonnell, McKemcDonnell. Represent Legislative District 5, South Omaha. I come before you today to discuss a pressing issue facing Omaha and our state, lead services lines and our urgent need for action. Lead poisoning can be devastating, impairing children's learning abilities and even increasing their chances of being involved in criminal activity. In Omaha alone, there are an estimated 16,000 lead service lines that must be replaced at a cost currently of $128 million, which will only increase over time if we delay any longer. Replacing a lead service line in homes built before 1940 comes with an alarming cost of around $8,000 for the homeowner. Understandably, this is not practical, especially since those homes are situated in the oldest parts of our state and generally have lower property values. I have handed out to the committee a map of the lead service lines in the Omaha area. There are more across the state, but overall majority fall in the older parts of Omaha. The water in Omaha's main is completely devoid of lead contamination, yet when it remains dormant in a lead service line for an extended amount of time, bleaching can occur and prove unsafe to human health. Later, we will be hearing from Metropolitan Utilities District, MUD, about more details pertaining to those hazardous lines. The good news is that the federal government has provided Nebraska with significant financial resources to address this issue. We have the opportunity to claw our tax dollars back from Washington, D.C., while also solving a pressing problem for a number of our citizens. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Act has provided the state of Nebraska with roughly 28 to 29 million additional dollars each year for the next 5 years into the NDE's Drinking Water Reserve Fund program for lead service line replacement. Collectively, our state will receive 140 to 145 million specifically for lead service replacement, considerable sum that we can use if we correctly leverage our dollars. To guarantee that an adequate number of workers are ready to carry out the jobs before time runs out, LB 613 provides a workforce development component that ensures MUD's helps provide the training resources necessary to the community. By utilizing these funds and our own resources, Nebraska can leverage nearly double what is necessary to address this pressing issue and ensure substantial long-term cost savings for Nebraska taxpayers. We are currently going through the EPA guidelines in our own statutes to ensure we maximize available funding with the lowest amount of required state funds. We know this problem is going on, and approximately 55% of it's going on in the Omaha area, which you see that map. The other 45% is going on through our states. It's homes that were built prior to 1940. The health, and it's going to be testimony behind me, the health concerns and the long-term effects to especially our children going forward is going to continue until we find a way to solve this problem. We know the federal government has stepped forward, recognized this problem throughout the country, but we also know that we as a state would like to partner with the federal government and of course the local entities to try to solve this problem long-term, because until we solve it, it's not going to go away, it's just going to grow. Here to answer any of your questions, and I will definitely be here to close.
Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you, Senator McDonnell. What's the difference between the yellow and the blue?
Which map are you looking at?
Right here.
Based on, I believe and I'll have these guys, they'll have you follow up on that to answer that. What's that, north and south? That's all was the dividing was north and south. It's not based on the 20. If you look at the scale, it's not anything to do with the 20 to 60,000 home income. It's just basically north and south.
Why do you always differentiate between north and south? Why just say Omaha?
Well, I'm proud to be from South Omaha, and growing up in Legislative District 5, there is a difference between North and South Omaha. And I believe Senator Armendariz might disagree, but I think South Omaha, according to the football schedule and the past history, has always proven to be better than I'm just joking, but I'm proud to be from South Omaha.
So this little map right here you gave us has 16 senators on it. In my area, that would cover one small county.
So right now, MUD represents about 700,000 people of our 1.9 million throughout the state. But of course, we're looking at all
people that are living in homes built prior to 1940, and I'll get those maps for you, the ones I have available, and then I'll get you also the PowerPoint from MUD that they have in my packet.
In my district, like Arthur County would have 400 people and 10,000 cows.
Are there other questions? Senator Armendariz?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Senator.
Yes.
I will not build on that. So the federal government's going to pay for the cost of the replacement of the lines, and this is to help MUD staff that replacement?
No, so MUD is doing their part up to the main, and I've got a map here that I'll make sure I hand out, it's a PowerPoint that I think MUD did a good job showing you what their responsibility is and the homeowner's responsibility. So if you look at this, going back to us having an opportunity with what's coming down from the federal government, MUD is, I believe, trying to help those people, but it's our responsibility, but I say that the individual's responsibility, homeowner's responsibility, based on, if you look at the water service up to the main water line, and then looking at it's coming into the home, that's what needs to be replaced. And we think that older homes built prior to 1940 have, of course, the most need. And they give you kind of a diagram here on the laws, have they been passed since this happened in 1940. But it's basically us trying to assist those individuals that, because their income is so low, and MUD also has a plan to help with this, but if we can leverage the federal monies, we think we can be successful in a shorter period of time, because the problem's not going away, and it's going to affect the next generation if those services aren't replaced coming into the home.
How much is the city contributing?
I don't know.
Could they pick up the bulk of this instead of the state?
Well, the idea is trying to leverage the money, and that'll be discussed with, actually, if we're talking about 45 million, can we turn that into 95 million from the feds? And regardless of it's the city, MUD, county, state, how are we going to leverage the most money we possibly can to help these people throughout the state? So of course, if you're looking at a city of Omaha potentially, yes, that could be discussed. The city of Omaha. Or so. The government more than we will be able to leverage the city of Omaha. But again, I think we should ask everyone to help solve this problem because of the long-term health impacts it's going to have to the next generation.
Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clemens. So, Senator McDonnell, if you were mayor, would that help?
I would look at this issue very seriously as mayor, and I would definitely look at the budgeting process to try to alleviate this problem as soon as possible to help the citizens of Omaha.
So here's a legitimate question. Who owns the pipe up to the water meter or the valve when they shut it off? The city own that up to there, and then it's the landowner's responsibility from their end?
What we're talking about is helping, because it is the homeowner's responsibility, so we're helping the homeowner. It's their responsibility, and they own the part that we're talking about, part of that service, they own it.
So the main water line in the street? Is
The main water line, which I'll get copies of.
Is the main water line, have lead in it?
No, I believe what MUD's done is they've replaced, and where it's coming is basically sitting in those old lines that are responsibility of the homeowner. Okay. And that's where the leaching's becoming a problem because they haven't replaced their responsibility.
Okay, so here's where I'm trying to go. If it's up to the shutoff, because every house has to have a shutoff.
Yes.
All right. And you had $8,000 estimated to be replaced that. In my location, we have people that do directional boring. So they don't have to dig up the lawn or nothing, they just go and bore right in. And if you make a hole in the side of your house, they'll put that pipe right through that hole. So why would it cost $8,000 if they're only going from the shutoff to the house? Why would that cost $8,000?
So if you look at the diagram in front of you, up to the street is MUD's responsibility. The rest is the homeowner's responsibility. So if you look at where it's all boxed, I believe is it all boxed in red? That's the homeowner's responsibility. So if you look at the box around it, and I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of
So what
this.
you're saying is they got to dig it up in the street and start there.
See from the street, yes, from the street inward. If you look at that description of the house and where the street is, that's where MUD's responsibility stops.
Is it so high cost because we have union plumbers put that in?
you'd have excellent workmanship if you had union plumbers putting it in, but this bill does not address that.
I just thought of that.
Thank you, Senator.
I think the MUD representative might have more details on that. Seeing no other question, Senator Lippincott.
The blue and the yellow is the area you're talking about, but are there other portions of Omaha that were also built before 1940 that have lead?
Well, sporadically, and the idea of throughout the state where homes were built prior to 1940. But that's the majority of the area that MUD looked at just recently.
Other questions, Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you for being here with this. The 28 to 29 million that you say for 5 years, we're going to get that from the federal government.
I want to take cash reserve and I want to use as
No.
leverage to get from the federal government.
It says the bipartisan infrastructure acts provided Nebraska roughly 28 to 29 million additional dollars.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
In your thing.
Yes.
That is a program from the federal government that the city of Omaha or MUD or wherever, they know they will be getting that for the next 5 years.
Well, yes, potentially that's the money we were talking about, leveraging as much we can state,
Right.
MUD, to make sure that we capture those funds that are coming down from the infrastructure program from the federal government, yes.
But what I'm getting at.
I'm not
there's some-
guaranteeing anything. Senator, if you're asking me to guarantee money from the federal government,
Yeah,
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing
Is there some pretty good assurance that we're going to get it?
You can ask MUD.
Well, ask that,
if they-
okay.
yeah. There's also the you can reference the 140 to 145 million specifically for lead service replacement that we're discussing also from the federal government.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there proponents for LB 613? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Megan Walter, MEGANWALTER, here today on behalf of the Metropolitan Utilities District in support of LB 613. I'd like to thank Senator McDonnell for bringing forth this important legislation. In my testimony today, I want to cover 4 things. What are lead service lines? How big of a problem are they financially for those in our jurisdiction? Where are they located? And why these dollars should be allocated to address this issue. You've been provided a handout of materials. On page 3 is an illustration showing that service lines are the pipes that feed water from the MUD water main to the home. MUD, like most utilities in the country and in our state, own and are responsible for the water main. We do not have any detectable level of lead in the water that is in the water main itself. The problem occurs when the water leaves the water main and enters the homeowner-owned service line, where leaching can occur in old water services that are made of lead. As you know, lead in water can cause significant health issues. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, there is no safe level of lead. Even low levels of lead in the blood of children often result in behavior and learning problems, lower IQ, hyperactivity, slow growth and hearing problems, and even worse in some rare cases. The Metropolitan Utilities District serves water to roughly 700,000 Nebraskans, and we estimate we have roughly 16,000 homeowners with lead service lines. At an average cost to replace each one at $8,000, our homeowners have a collective liability in today's dollars of $128 million. Lead service lines exist almost exclusively in older parts of communities because plumbers stopped using lead around 1940. Please refer to page 10 and 11 in your handout. In the MUD service territory, the problem exists primarily in disproportionately impacted areas east of 72nd Street, specifically North and South Omaha. These areas are served by Senators Wayne, McKinney, Vargas, McDonnell, and John Kavanaugh. Of the 16,000 known and presumed lead service lines, approximately 9,000 are in disadvantaged communities as identified in the qualified census tracts. To illustrate the impacts to this population in the qualified census tracts, the median household income ranges from $20,000 to less than $60,000 a year, according to data from the United Way of the Midlands. As previously stated, since the average cost to replace a lead service line is approximately $8,000, that equates to up to 38% of a homeowner's annual household income. In addition, there are more than 31,000 children under the age of 18 in the qualified census tracts who are possibly being exposed to lead in drinking water. MUD is currently replacing, through our own infrastructure replacement efforts, about 200 lead service lines a year. When we are replacing a main, if the customer has a lead service line, we replace the line for them at no cost to the homeowner. At this rate, it will take us almost 80 years to get the lead out of the ground. One of the other issues that makes this an extremely difficult one is that it's a slippery slope. Once we go down the road of replacing some homeowners' lead service lines, we'll be expected to replace them all, which, as you can see, is quite costly. To further exacerbate this issue, we believe there will be a federal mandate to replace a certain percentage each year. Why is it important to put money towards this issue? First and foremost, removing lead service lines will help reduce the risk of lead exposure to pregnant women, infants, and children, improving the quality of life and health of some of the most vulnerable members of the community. Other benefits include meaningful job creation and higher property values in the North and South Omaha communities. If MUD could leverage these funds, we could create a dedicated lead service line replacement program with very little impact to our ratepayers. It would be the difference between a long drawn-out program to a much more robust one. It really is a one-time program in the sense that once we're done removing these lead service lines, the project is over and we could do it in a fraction of the time if given assistance. Thank you for your time today, and thanks again to Senator McDonnell for having this introduced. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Other questions? Senator Dover?
On these older houses, are the pipes inside the houses also lead?
Some are, absolutely.
What's the proposed solution for that?
MUD doesn't have a proposed solution for that as of yet. I think our main focus is going to be to get the lead service lines out of the ground, and then we will actually be testing the water services after they're replaced, and we'll still be checking for lead levels. And at that point, we can have discussions with the homeowner.
So is the responsibility of the homeowner, is that from the curb stop to the house?
It's actually from the MUD water main and the corporation all the way to the meter.
Oh, that's interesting. It's not that way in all the cities in Nebraska.
I'm
I
not
realize
sure
how
about all
it,
the
but in most cities it isn't. It's the curb stop to the house. Yeah. Thank you.
And then for MUD, it is literally the entire service line.
Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Thank you for being here. Have you started on this project already then? Are you replacing so many?
We're replacing close to 200 a year through our water infrastructure replacement projects that we have going on right now. Yes.
Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Clements. Miss Walter grew up in Alliance. Just wanted you to know that.
I did.
Her father's in the softball Hall of Fame too.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, so you've replaced some of these. So I'm
Yes.
sure you've kept track of what it costs. Is it actually $8,000?
It is.
Are you doing directional boring?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have right now 3 main plumbers that we work with in Omaha. If given this money, we would have to expand it so that we could actually get as many done as quickly as possible. But yes, we do have contractors that use directional boring.
How long does it take to do a replacement?
Usually about half a day, less than.
And it's $8,000.
Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah.
I need to be a plumber.
Right?
That's a year.
Some are less,
Well, we did
but some are
talk
more.
about a year.
Other questions, Senator Dover?
When you replace the line, that is always require breaking up the curb and part of the street also?
Not always. It depends on where the water main is located.
Oh, sure,
Some
if it's
are
closer.
located, yes. So we call it short side and long side.
Right.
If you're on the short side, you're probably underneath the sidewalk, which is much cheaper. But then if you're on the long side, and that's why it averages out to $8,000.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
I had a question. I believe the city of Omaha received about $100 million of ARPA funds. What amount did they allocate for lead pipe replacement?
As of right now, none.
Really? Okay. Douglas County, did they provide any funding?
As of now, none.
Thank you. Are there other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Rick Kubat, RACKKUBAT, here today on behalf of the Metropolitan Utilities District. I did not have any prepared testimony, but just wanted to answer a few questions. Yes, the federal government has provided an abundant amount of cash to fix this problem. It's one of their biggest priorities. It was mentioned last year in the State of the Union address. Specifically, they wanted folks to spend their American Rescue Plan dollars on lead replacement. But because of the way that the state of Nebraska is set up, those monies, as you referenced earlier, Senator Clements, over $1 billion to the state. I believe Douglas County got a roughly $100 million, and the city of Omaha got $100 million. The answer that Ms. Walter gave was that's correct. We've been unable to receive monies from the city of Omaha and Douglas County. That being said, they just simply have different priorities. The city of Omaha has got a combined sewer overflow issue with sewer rates. I'm not sure if that was part of it, but they essentially deal with different things. But because of the way that Nebraska is set up, MUD is its own political subdivision, so we didn't receive any ARPA funds. Senator McDonnell brought a bill last year requesting ARPA funds for this very project. But as we come before you today, thus far, nothing's been allocated. Essentially, the federal government set up two avenues of federal funding, and they said, hey, we want you to use both. One was the ARPA dollars. That would have been kind of nice because that would have been 100%. We could have gone out and got the work started. We're at zero there thus far. The other bucket that Senator McDonnell spoke to is the Nebraska Department of Environment and Engineering gets federal funding into a bifurcated system. One is called the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, and that would be more for your wastewater. And the other one is called the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Since MUD does potable water, we would be eligible for what's known as the DWSRF program. That program has historically been used to assist smaller communities. And what it is, it's a revolving loan program where there can be various amounts of loan forgiveness. Those loans, to answer your question, Senator Armendariz, are low to 0% loans. On top of it, what Senator McDonnell referred to is through the bipartisan infrastructure law that passed last November, the federal government said, and this is guaranteed money because Nebraska is a 1% state of Nebraska, we're going to give you $28 to $29 million per year for each of the next 5 years on top of your base level drinking water SRF program, additional dollars, which is collectively 140 to 145 million specifically for lead service lines. As Senator McDonnell spoke to, we in the Omaha metro area probably have north of 50% of our state's lead service lines. So the federal dollars are there. But what we would need to do is come forward, and it's a loan program. And my understanding, in all likelihood, if we go and borrow a dollar from the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, the state of Nebraska is going to provide 58 cents for free. And then we're going to be required to repay 42 cents on that dollar back. So what we're trying to do with this bill, and I know that this will make Senator Erdman excited, is we're trying to say if the state were so inclined to provide $40 million, we're going to be able to leverage that and be able to latch on to that loan forgiveness of 58 cents on the dollar. Essentially $40 million of state local match with the federal funds essentially equates to $95 million. Can MUD do this on their own? Absolutely. But what our concern is without creating a robust loan program, we're simply not going to have a larger program to be able to get this public health hazard taken care of. So with that, I'm sorry, but I wanted to fill in a few details with that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for that. Are there questions? I think that was a good explanation. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there other proponents for LB 613? Seeing none, anyone opposing LB 613? Seeing none, anyone in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, Senator McDonnell, you're welcome to close.
Thank you, Chairperson Clements, members of the committee. To follow up, when I started going through my opening, you all did not have a copy of the PowerPoint. So if you look at page 3, that kind of tells you what the property owner's responsibility is and what MUD's been working on. And also page 4 of that handout, you can look at the time frame from 1913 up till 2021 with the important dates for the lead service lines. What Mr. Kubat discussed, we'll get that to you in writing. The idea of will that money eventually, if we secure the money, could it end up being going back to the federal government? Yes. If we don't take advantage of it, it's not going to be around forever. But wanted to focus not on so much as losing those dollars, it was more on the importance of the health to the next generation. And has been testified, approximately 50+%, the North Omaha, South Omaha area, but any home prior to 1940 throughout the state of Nebraska is going to have these issues. I think we should address it east, west, north, south in the state, and we have an opportunity financially with the assistance of the federal government. And again, I'll get all that that Mr. Kubat went through in writing for you so you can digest it.
Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator McDonnell. And you may know the answer to this, and maybe you don't. Does RO treatment take lead out of the water?
Does what?
RO system take lead out of the water?
I don't know. The answer is, I just got the answer, Senator, no.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Senator McDonnell. We have position comments for the record. And that was 613. We have 2 proponents, no opponents, none in the neutral. And that concludes the hearing for LB 613. And that concludes appropriation hearings for today.
I'm not asking you.